There are many styles of traditional and modern music of Ghana due to its cosmopolitan geographic position on the African continent. The best-known modern genre originating in Ghana is Highlife. For many years, Highlife was the preferred music genre until the introduction of Hiplife and many others. Traditional music. The traditional musicology of Ghana may be divided geographically between the open and vast savanna country of northern Ghana inhabited by Ghanaians, of Gur and Mande-speaking groups, and the fertile, forested southern coastal areas inhabited by Ghanaians speaking KWA languages such as Akan. The northern musical traditions belong to the wider Sahelian musical traditions. It features a mix of melodic composition on stringed instruments such as the kologo lute and the gonje fiddle, wind instruments such as flutes and horns, and voice with polyrhythms clapped or played on the talking drum, good drums or brekete bass drums. The tradition of Jaol music is also common, especially in northwestern Ghana around Wara and Lora. Music in the northern styles is mostly set to a minor pentatonic or chromatic scale, and melisma plays an important part in melodic and vocal styles. There is a long history of either griot or praise singing traditions. The music of the coast is associated with social functions, and relies on complex polyrhythmic patterns played by drums and bells as well as harmonized song. Drums and dance are often linked, and a tradition of royal talking drums fontum from means music is widely used for communication of both tangible and esoteric topics. The most well-known of southern Ghanaian drum traditions is the Keti and Adora drum and bell ensembles. Music can also be linked to traditional religions. An exception to this rule is the Akan tradition of singing with the Sepurewe harp lute, which had its origins in the stringed harps of the North and West. Gold Coast period. During the Gold Coast era the Gold Coast was a hotbed of musical syncretism. Rhythms especially from Gombe and Ashiko, guitar styles such as mainline and Osibasaba, European brass bands and sea shanties, were all combined into a melting pot that became Highlife. Mid-20th century and the invention of Ghanaian pop. Ghana became an independent nation in 1957. The music of Ghana often reflects a Caribbean influence, yet it still retains a flavor all its own. While Pan-Ghanaian music had been developed for some time, the middle of the 20th century saw the development of distinctly Ghanaian pop music. Highlife incorporated elements of swing, jazz, rock, ska and soukous. To a much lesser extent, Ghanaian musicians found success in the United States and, briefly, the United Kingdom with the surprise success of Osibis's Afro rock in the 1970s. Guitar bands in the 1930s, 40s, 50s, and 60s. In the 1930s, Sam's Trio, led by Jacob Sam, was the most influential of the Highlife guitar bands. There are Ya Ambonsa, 3 versions of which were recorded in 1928 for Zonophone, was a major hit that remains a popular staple of numerous Highlife bands. The next major guitar band leader was E.K. Nyame, who sang in TWI. Nyame also added the double bass and more elements of the Western Hemisphere, including jazz and Cuban music on the recommendation of his producer and manager E. Newman Ajiri. In the 1960s, dance Highlife was more popular than guitar band Highlife. Most of the guitar bands began using the electric guitar until a roots revival in the mid-1970s. Dance Highlife in the 1930s, 40s, 50s, and 60s. Dance Highlife evolved during World War II, when American jazz and swing became popular with the arrival of servicemen from the United States and United Kingdom. After independence in 1957, the socialist government began encouraging folk music, but Highlife remained popular and influences from Trinidadian music. E.T. Mensah was the most influential musician of this period, and his band The Tempos frequently accompanied the president. The original band leader of The Tempos was Guy Warren, who was responsible for introducing Caribbean music to Ghana and, later, was known for a series of innovative fusions of African rhythms and American jazz. King Bruce, Jerry Hansen and Stan Plange also led influential dance bands during the 1950s and 1960s. By the 1970s, however, pop music from Europe and the US dominated the Ghanaian scene until a mid-1970s roots revival. 1970s head revival. By the beginning of the 1970s, traditionally styled highlife had been overtaken by electric guitar bands and pop dance music. Since 1966 and the fall of President Kwame Nkrumah, many Ghanaian musicians moved abroad, settling in the US and UK. Highlife bands arose like Sammy Kofi's. In 1971, the Soul to Soul Music Festival was held in Accra. Several legendary American musicians played, including Wilson Pickett, Ike and Tina Turner and Carlos Santana. With the exception of Mexican-American Santana, these American superstars were all black, and their presence in Accra was seen as legitimizing Ghanaian music. Though the concert is now mostly remembered for its role as a catalyst in the subsequent Ghanaian roots revival, it also led to increased popularity for American rock and soul. Inspired by the American musicians, new guitar bands arose in Ghana, including Nana Ampadu and Amp, the African Brothers, the City Boys and others. Musicians such as C.K. Man, Daniel Amponsa and Eddie Dornco incorporated new elements, especially from Jamaican reggae. A group called Wolome also arose in the 1970s, leading a cultural revival to encourage Ghanaian youths to support their own countrymen's music. By the 1980s, the UK was experiencing a boom in African music as Ghanaian and others moved there in large numbers. The group Highlife International was probably the most influential band of the period, and others included John Kay, Dade Kramer, Orchestra Jazeera and Ben Bracco. In the middle of the decade, however, British immigration laws changed, and the focus of Ghanaian emigration moved to Germany. The Ghanaian German community created a form of highlife called Burger Highlife. The most influential early Burger Highlife musician was George Darko, whose Akute Brofo coined the term and is considered the beginning of the genre. Burger Highlife was extremely popular in Ghana, especially after computer-generated dance beats were added to the mix. The same period saw a Ghanaian community appear in Toronto and elsewhere in Canada. Pat Thomas is probably the most famous Ghanaian Canadian musician. Other émigrés include Ghanaian-American Obo Adi, the Ghanaian Swiss Andy Vance and the Ghanaian Dutch Kumbi Saleh. In Ghana itself during the 1980s, reggae became extremely popular. Hiplife. By the late 1990s, a new generation of artists discovered the so-called hiplife. The originator of this style is Reggie Roxton, a Ghanaian musician who dabbled with hip-hop in the United States before finding his unique style. Hiplife basically was hip-hop in the Ghanaian local dialect backed by elements of the traditional highlife. Ace music producer Hammer of the last two unveiled artists including Obrafour, Tini and XO, who further popularized the hiplife music genre respectively. Hiplife has since proliferated and spawned stars such as Reggie Roxton, Shera Aganu, Igbiedem, Samini and Sarkodie. Producers responsible for steering this genre to what it is today were Hammer of the last two, Ball J and L.